With the recent release of Chapter 8S, we've got a lot of lore to cover between a mix of future plot hints and the closing of a very important character arc. Let's dive right into the events of Chapter 8S, and then we'll focus on a little deeper analysis and theory, shall we? Okay, wow, that was a sad chapter. I'm on the fence if I would give it the saddest story medal of Epic 7, as I do think that as a whole, the Eulogy of a Saint still holds that title, but this one, in my opinion, is as close as you can get. So that begs the question, what the heck happened in Chapter 8S? Well, let's find out. Our story begins chronologically just before the chapter where the Phantom CIC exits the Chaos Gate into the past with Alencia confronting the Great Mortalix about Senya's whereabouts. Apparently, she has gone out to train and hone her skills so that she will be able to control the red stone that Mort gave her. Alencia, obviously anxious, blames Mort for sending her out with a stone that even the Mad Dragons could not control, whereas Mort is only focused on creating a being strong enough to entertain him. Alencia rushes off to find her. The events with the Phantom CIC take place, and Senya is defeated by Politis, who releases a tiny spark of condensed energy generated by the core of Politia, but is rescued by Alencia just before Politis is able to attack her directly. Senya, wavering in and out of consciousness, recalls the first time she took flight with Alencia. A few days later, Senya awakes from her injuries to Mort commenting that she's weaker than he had anticipated. Senya remembers being lifted into the sky after the blast from Politis and assumes incorrectly that Mortalix was the one that saved her, deepening her sense of trust with him. This will be important later. Mort entertains her assumption and continues to play with her emotions in order to achieve his own ends. He instructs Senya to go to a human village and act as an envoy for the offerings that go to the dragons. This is how she will be able to get close enough to Uberius, Dragon Lord and Mort's father, to kill him and achieve her revenge for the dragons betraying and destroying her home village, along with her parents and the rest of her friends. He hands Senya a vial of poison and tells her that it will provide her with the opportunity to extract her revenge. I wonder if this is where Luna got the idea from. Senya curiously questions Mort's motives about killing his own father, to which Mort responds that his father has taken everything fun away from him. He murdered Mort's teacher just so that he could ascend as the Dragon Lord, the one person that could best Mort in combat, and thus give Mort purpose. He claims that Uberius was afraid of him and so usurped the throne as fast as he could. Mort then sympathizes with Senya, saying that he felt alone and purposeless, just like she did when her village was burned to the ground. Man, Mort must be taking manipulation classes from Tenebria. Senya fully buys into his sob story and heads off to the nearest human village. I think SmileGate is really trying to get us to hate Mort here, but to be honest, I think they did that already by introducing his lackluster kit and his EE, am I right? As Senya strolls through the human village, she is caught off guard by wayward memories of her peaceful past. A child runs past her selling cookies, and she is reminded of a similar situation she had with Alencia. She is even tempted to buy something from Mort, suddenly overwhelmed by a strange emotion that she's unused to. Suddenly, a man rushes by her in a frenzy, talking about how the guards he had hired to bring a tribute to the dragons has abandoned their duty. Senya immediately jumps into action and volunteers to guard the tribute safely. As she examines the storehouse, she finds a young boy rummaging through and informs the tribute manager, only to discover that the young boy is part of the tribute. Yikes. Senya is taken aback as she is unaware that actual humans were being given as tributes now. The manager explains that if a family has nothing to offer, they will give up their children, and that these are desperate times, but the protection from the dragons is of the highest priority. I believe the original deal was to protect villages from the Mad Dragons, but then a Mad Dragon was killed and Uberius kind of freaked out and thought the humans were going to attack, so he burned Senya's village. I think that's how it went. Still a pretty crappy deal for the humans, huh? Senya requests that she be made a tribute in place of the child, to which the manager reluctantly accepts. Senya returns to Mort's storehouse, hoping to present him with her gift from the market, but is attacked by Sentinel Zoranox, an ancient dragon. She manages to scratch through one of his scales before collapsing from exhaustion. Before Zoranox can finish her, Mortalix appears to explain that Senya is no threat to the dragons and brings her back to the storehouse. Zoranox inquires how she is so powerful for a human, and Mort explains that he wants her to kill his father in order to test her resolve. Eventually, she will become a worthy opponent for him to fight. When they return to the storehouse, they find that Senya is gone, and Mort assumes that Alencia is responsible. Senya awakens to find an unfamiliar face waiting for her, a grizzled man with silver hair, piercing yellow eyes, and an assortment of swords attached to his belt. Senya questions how a human could survive with minimal clothing, and he says that he is not an ordinary human. His name is Ran, and he is in search of something precious. He comments that Senya's power is being drawn from somewhere else, and Senya explains to him that her goal is to kill the Dragon Lord, to take revenge for her village. Ran, however, dismisses her plan and tells her that revenge rarely gives what the user is looking for. Senya fires back, asking if he would do the same thing in her position, to which Ran is silent. He then inquires how she will get her revenge when she appears to be overwhelmed by her own power, and then offers his assistance. He instructs her that true revenge can be achieved through control, and that blind vengeance only leads to innocent blood. He urges her as she attacks a mad dragon that she should only use her own power that is within her control, and no more, or else she will become the very thing she is fighting. As they are spotted by some more wandering dragons, they begin to combine into an image of herself, to which Senya engages. Ah, so she's getting the Darth Vader treatment now. Again, I guess if you're going to copy something, copy the best. Anyways, upon defeating her image, she reveals that she can fight without being taken over by the voice of the Red Stone if she remembers who or what she is fighting for, her friends and her family. Ran explains to her that vengeance is meaningless unless it is achieved by one's own strength, and with that, he takes his leave. A few days pass, and Mort and Senya prepare for her meeting with Uberius. Senya recalls periods of time when her parents would prepare their own offerings to the dragons and how they truly hoped that the village would be safe. Later on, Senya travels with the tribute manager until they reach the altar entrance, and the manager takes his leave as it is too dangerous for him to go with her. He pleads her not to upset the dragons as that would undoubtedly lead to their villages being destroyed. Senya nods and heads to the altar. There, she is met by Uberius' guards, who let her in due to her status as a tribute. There, she comes face to face with Uberius himself, who appears to show signs of sympathy for the humans, remarking that the humans were struggling and that he never meant for the tributes to inspire fear. Senya notices this fragility, but dismisses it as it is useless now that her village has already been destroyed. Uberius mentions that maybe things could have been different if he had made a different decision long ago. Senya asks if he is referring to the destruction of a village that managed to kill a mad dragon, and Uberius answers in silence. He then uncharacteristically tells Senya to leave, hoping that this will send a message to the villages that their offerings need not be so extravagant anymore. Senya grapples with whether or not she should act for the sake of all humans still alive, or revenge for those already dead. As Uberius is about to leave, Senya asks if he would like a drink, and Uberius obliges. As the poison-laced liquid coats his throat, Senya smiles and reveals that it was her village that was destroyed long ago by the mad dragons, and that she is killing him now as a result. Coughing up blood, Uberius questions how Senya got a hold of poison that affected dragons, and pleads her to save him. He admits that he made the wrong decision, and that if he dies now, the relationship between humans and dragons will only deteriorate further. Uncaringly, Senya says that she does not care about things returning to the past, as she has no home to go back to. With one fell swoop, Senya lunges forward towards Uberius and fatally stabs him through the chest. As she waits for a feeling of achievement to rush over her, the memories from Ran and Alencia fill her mind regarding the nature of revenge. She then concludes that she cannot be with Mort, as she killed his family, even if it was with his help. As she flees the altar with Uberius' subordinates in pursuit, she evades them until she runs into Sir Mortalix. She tells him that she cannot stay with him. Mort responds that he has something to tell her and that she assumes that it's something to do with their relationship. But instead, Mort informs her that he was the one that inspired the Mad Dragons to attack her village. As she realizes the con that Mort played her with, she is engulfed with rage once more and attacks him, but is only able to scratch his armor before the red stone begins siphoning too much of her blood. She drops to one knee and Mort taunts her, revealing that his heart is where she should have pierced him to kill him. That probably won't be relevant later in Chapter 9, right? As he leaves her in the snow, he reminds her to get stronger, to use his father's body to make weapons, so that one day she will find him and they will fight as Mort had intended all along. He calls her a suitable substitute for a mad Alencia, and then she collapses from her injuries. A few days later, Senya recovers and returns to the small village with Uberius' body, and asks if anyone is willing to aid her in her quest to kill the Mad Dragons. Although some fear that the Mad Dragons will attack due to the loss of their lord, there are others that accept Senya's offer to build an army armed with weapons made from the dragons' very own bodies. If the humans can get a leg up on the dragons, then they will no longer need to offer tributes anymore. Before long, Senya is able to gather people from many different villages to form an army, and the war between the humans and the dragons would begin. Over time, Senya's health would deteriorate from the constant usage of the red stone. She would be reminded from the children in the village that she had once been given a choice to extract revenge or return to live safely. Eventually, she realizes that her thirst for revenge has spawned an entire city built upon revenge. The city of Wittenberg. As days go by, she continues to be plagued by the red stone taking over, and Senya realizes that she is broken. Telling the guards not to follow her, she ventures out into the Dragon Valley in search of Alencia, hoping to see her one last time. Memories of when they first met flood into her mind, and she sheds a tear of regret. As she collapses, she hallucinates Alencia's image. Her body starts to chill and her vision blurs as she confesses to her that she simply wished for things to go back to the way they were, when revenge and rage did not control her. And as darkness overtakes her, she asks Alencia for forgiveness for returning so late. Days later, Alencia visits Senya's grave, only to be interrupted by Mortalix, also regretting her passing, but for obviously different reasons. Dude, this guy just does not give up, does he? Mort offers her the red stone and asks her if she is angry enough with him to try and kill him, and Alencia declines once more before leaving. Mort then sends an anonymous note to Wittenberg so that the soldiers arrive to discover the red stone with instructions on how to use it. They commemorate Senya's passing and vow to never forgive the dragons for what they've done. As the war intensifies, many generations of rulers from Wittenberg would use the red stone to empower themselves, but none of them would ever be a match for Mortalix in the end, unlike the versions of Mortalix that SmileGate has given us. Entering a state of depression, Mortalix decides to seal himself off into a pocket dimension and entrusts his subordinate, Lucius, with awakening him when a worthy opponent appears. This would not occur until many years later with the arrival of the heir of the Covenant. So, as mentioned in the video, this chapter is definitely a contender for the saddest story in Epic 7 award, as the circumstances that transpire for Senya are just plain tragic. In terms of its ending, it's actually, in my opinion, worse than Elegy for a Saint in terms of its overall result, because at least in Elegy, our heroes were able to seal the Archdemon, whereas here, a war begins, our hero loses and dies, and never gets to actually see her old mentor again. Senya also does not get any reprieve from her misery, as betrayal after betrayal happens, and she's barely even given enough time to think, let alone make beneficial choices. At least Diane had time to spend with Basque and the others, and actually had a laugh here and there. Senya was all alone. I don't know about you guys, but to me, that trumps the death of Bask. So let me know in the comments below what you think is the saddest story, or if you think there's another story out there that could run against these two stories. I am glad that Senya's story has finally concluded, because we can finally see the whole scope of her influence on the state of Eureka leading into present day. The interesting part here is that Ras really has not had much screen time in this episode, as much of the story is told as flashbacks within flashbacks, which makes sense. Ras stepped into a pot that was already boiling, whereas in Britannia, the true conflict starts with Vildred when Ras awakens, and in Sidonia, Straze is moving through the continent just ahead of our heroes. But this still leaves the collective consciousness of Eureka that spoke with Ras. I wonder if that entity will reappear, and maybe even confront Mort at the end of his life. Considering we know that the collective consciousness is all of the people who have died due to the mad dragons, knowing that they are a result of Mort's insatiable desires, and that they take the form of a young Senya, this would be incredibly poetic, and maybe even cause Mort to reconsider his life decisions. Along with this though, now that Mort has revealed to us his weakness, I think it would be a complete wasted opportunity for there not to be a Mortalix versus Ilyanev battle somewhere. Ilyanev is effectively the end result of what Mort wanted from Senya, and therefore is the perfect match for him because she is completely willing to use the Crimson Ore as well as sacrifice anything to defeat the Mad Dragons. All she would need is the knowledge that Mort was responsible for everything to do with the Mad Dragons, and I think Ilyanev would just go ballistic on him. If SmileGate has set this up so perfectly like this and does not pay it off, I'm really going to start questioning their storytelling abilities. Actually, on a complete side note, SmileGate. Let's be real for a sec here. Can we please change Mort's kit to the one that we fought in the story? Because this is the kind of power that Mort deserves, not the lackluster support role that we've been given. This guy is literally the cause of Eureka's entire volatile political landscape, and he did it all on a whim, on a simple desire to not be bored. This guy needs a kit that reflects that story. Okay, mini rant over. Where were we? Ah, yes. I'm of the opinion that there will be no battle between Mort and Ras, at least not in the way that Mort wants, because Ras just does not fill that role for Mort. Mort wants someone that is willing to kill him, to go above and beyond their own safety to gain power. I do think that Ras is going to learn something very fundamental from Mort, and even though Mort is not human, but a dragon, Ras might try to start learning and understanding not just humans, but mortals in general. It's also interesting, and although many of us probably have already assumed this, but it's clear that everything is happening in Eureka as a result of Twig. Let me know in the comments if you want me to try and compile a full history of Eureka, because we've been fed little bits and pieces from all over its history, and maybe putting it all together might actually be interesting. From what I can gather, Mort used the Crimson Ores to manipulate other dragons into going mad, so that they would eventually become worthy opponents for him. Unfortunately, this backfires on him, and too many of them are created. Uberius then ascends to the throne in the hopes that he can protect the human settlements from sparking war. But when one of the mad dragons is killed by the humans, he has a moment where he still sees the mad dragons as, well, dragons, and this results in the burning of Senya's village. Mort, seeing potential in Senya, then hands her the ore, which eventually leads to the creation of Wintenberg, and the constant usage of the dragon insignia, which is the same ore that Mort gave to Senya. We also know that Policia's core is being powered by a crimson ore, which is siphoning energy, or maybe even blood, from both Chaos Gates and monsters. I believe that the energy being harvested from monsters in Chapter 7S from Lefundos could actually just be their blood and being offered to Twig, who then unleashes power to power the city of Policia. So every part of Eureka is being touched by Twig's power. In Chapter 5, Watcher Shuri explains that the core of Policia can open chaos gates that give off energy that is then absorbed by the machine. Normally, a chaos gate opens in an area with strong chaotic energy, and when that energy is all consumed by the gate closes. It seems that Politis has figured out a way to weaponize and control the Crimson Ore to her ends. She uses the ore to open the chaos gate, and then absorbs all of the energy into the machine that then powers the city. Could Bellion know this and have made contact with Twig through the ore that's being used at the core of Policia? And then there's the big reveal of a new character named Ran. We can't possibly leave this chapter without discussing his potential influence on the plot. Considering that he immediately starts to train Senya on honing her control over her power, I think it's a very high possibility that this could be Vildred's teacher. Either that or Ran is another student that trained with the same said teacher. His sword looks quite crystalline and icy, and could be associated with the coldest season, winter. Vildred, according to his artifact, is equipped with the Summer Sword of Twilight. So there could be 3 other students who are each holding a sword named after the seasons. Ran could be one of them. The reason why I do not think he is from Eurasia, although we may meet him formally in Eurasia, is that his design is very reminiscent with Surin, and even with Ken's design, with all the bandages. Surin also gives off a very Japanese style of design, and Ran is clearly equipped with 4 katanas, a sword commonly used in Japanese culture. All of this evidence would point to Ran being from the Eastern Empire, which we will undoubtedly visit in Episode 5. Although, Vildred's artifact specifically says Eastern Swordsman, and technically Eurasia is an Eastern continent, not just the easternmost continent. And Surin's category in the journal is Eastern Continent and not Eastern Empire, which is what the continent is called in the adventure map. So, let me know what you think about Ran and what implications he could have in the future. Now, I finally want to go through my theory. At least a theory on what I want Chapter 9 to be about, because there are so many loose ends in Chapter 3 currently that could easily and thematically be tied up here and prepare us for a very nice, simple Chapter 10 against Bellion and possibly Twig. I think at the very least there needs to be a battle between Mortalix and Ilinav, as she is what Mort wanted Senya to become. It is only right that the city that Senya founded should produce the end of Mort's quest to create a perfect adversary for him. Ilinav could become so enraged at knowing that Mort is the progenitor of all of the Mad Dragons that she sacrifices part of the Wintenberg army's blood to power herself in order to fatally wound Mort before she herself expires from using the ore too much. This could allow Twig to partially manifest, like Fastus did, and she speaks with Ras regarding celestial matters, and tells him that she cannot be stopped. The citizens of Wintenberg will witness the sheer destruction caused by Ilyanev's wanton revenge, and finally realize that revenge may not be the right path. With Mort on the verge of death, he is visited by the ghost of Senya, who is also the collective consciousness of all of Eureka's dead, and they talk to him about all of the pain he has caused. They discover that when Ilyanev used the ore, it siphoned out the power from the other ores, which means that there are now no more mad dragons, just normal dragons. The city will then welcome Cecilia back onto the throne, as they are now ready to be led into a time of peace and prosperity. But we still have the issue of Policia and Lafundos. This provides Ras with some kind of army, especially considering there has not been any mention of anyone leaving for Britannia to request reinforcements like Violet did in Episode 2. What if Ras strikes a deal with the dragons to fight with Wintenberg and we have 2 arch enemies fighting together to save the continent? To be honest, as I'm writing this, it's starting to sound better and better. I think that this ties up all of the loose ends and gives both Mort and Ilyanev the deaths that they both want and deserve. It introduces Twig as an actual character and not just as a plot device, and very nicely leads into a fight with Policia in Chapter 10. Ras would want to follow Twig, but cannot because of the threat of Bellion on the Sanctuary, so he must deal with Bellion first, leaving Twig to set up Episode 4 in Eurasia as maybe the blood god of the vampires. But Keeper, you may be asking, what about Luna? I'm going to say that there's not enough time to fit the conclusion of Luna's story in this chapter, with so much already happening. And since we saw Luna conversing with Ervalin at the end of Chapter 8, maybe her story can conclude in Chapter 10. I'm thinking that Cecilia will forgive Luna and explain how relations with the dragons will be different from now on. Whatever they choose to do, I think it'll happen in Chapter 10, so we'll have to wait and see in Chapter 9 what SmileGate decides to do there. And that leads us to the end of my analysis and theory coming out of Chapter 8S. Let me know in the comments what you think and if you have any theories about Chapter 9 as well. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so already, and turn on the little bell for notifications on when I post another video. Leave a like if you enjoyed yourself because it's free to do so, and it helps get this video to more people. And finally, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, keep it real. Oh gosh, I just thought of something. What if Yufine becomes the next Dragon Lord? Hail Dragon Booba Queen!